Most people think if AA doesn't work for them, recovery doesn't work for them. Nobody told them about the other option. There is one, and it's been around for over 30 years. In the last episode, we talked about the 12-step program, what it is, why it works for some people, why it doesn't work for others. And I was careful about something in that episode. I didn't want to tear anything down because the point of this series isn't to tell you which path is wrong, it's to show you that more than one path exists. This episode is about a program that gets almost no attention compared to AA, not because it's less effective. The research suggests it may be more effective for certain people, but because it doesn't have 90 years of cultural visibility behind it, and because it asks you very different things. It's called Smart Recovery. And if nobody has ever mentioned it to you, that ends today. SMART stands for Self Management and Recovery Training. It was founded in 1994, a nonprofit free to anyone and available in over 30 countries. The reason it was built is simple. The founders looked at the 12-step model and asked a question that nobody wanted to ask out loud. What about the people who need science instead of spirituality? Smart Recovery is not a spiritual program. There is no higher power requirement. There is no sponsor. There are no steps. Instead, it's built on CBT, Cognitive Behavioral Therapy, the most researched psychological treatment for addiction that we have. Here's what that means in plain language. The 12-step model says you are powerless over your addiction and you need something outside of yourself to recover. SMART says you have the ability to understand why you use, change the thoughts that drive it, and build the skills to stop. Same destination, completely different philosophy about who's doing the driving. SMART meetings, and they do have meetings online and in person, are structured around 4 key areas: building and maintaining motivation to change, coping with urges, managing thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, living a balanced, satisfying life. It sounds clinical when you list it like that. It doesn't feel clinical in practice. It feels like being handed tools you never knew you were allowed to have. I want to get specific here because the differences aren't just philosophical. They change the entire experience of being in the room. In a 12-step meeting, you introduce yourself with your name and your addiction. I'm Carlo, and I'm an alcoholic. That language is intentional in that model. It's about honesty, surrender, identity. In a SMART meeting, you don't do that. Not because the program wants to avoid the truth, but because SMART's framework says you are a person who has struggled with addictive behavior. You are not the addiction. That distinction matters more than it might sound. The sponsor model doesn't exist in SMART. Instead, meetings are facilitated by trained volunteers and increasingly by licensed professionals. You bring your situation. The group uses evidence-based tools to work through it. Nobody tells you what your higher power is. Nobody asks you to work through 12 steps numbered in that order. What you get is a set of frameworks. One of the most used is called the cost-benefit analysis. You literally sit down and map out, what does using give me? What does using cost me? Not to feel guilty about the one column, to see both columns clearly at the same time, when your brain is only trying to show you one. That's CBT applied to recovery. And for a certain kind of person, It's exactly what they needed all along. I want to be honest here. The way I've tried to be honest in every episode of this series. Smart recovery is not for everyone either. No single path is. But the research points to some clear patterns about who it tends to work best for. If you're someone who left AA feeling like the spiritual framework was a wall, not because you're not trying, but because it genuinely doesn't match how your mind works, SMART may be the door that was always open. If you're someone who has been through therapy, who responds to being given frameworks rather than rules, who needs to understand the why before you can commit to the what, that's the SMART model. If the word powerless made you feel hopeless instead of honest, if surrender felt like giving up rather than letting go, this program was built for that gap. None of that makes you the wrong kind of person for recovery. It makes you someone who needed a different map. If this is the first time you've heard of Smart Recovery, that's exactly why this series exists. Subscribe if you want to keep following it. Episode 3 is going somewhere harder. We're talking about medication assisted treatment, Suboxone, methadone, and the conversation inside recovery communities about whether it counts as real sobriety. It's uncomfortable, but it needs to be said. This is the part I don't want to skip, because knowing something exists and knowing how to find it are two different things. Smart Recovery runs in-person meetings in most major cities. If you're not near one, online meetings run every day of the week, morning, afternoon, and evening. They're free. You don't register in advance. You don't commit to anything. You can sit in on a meeting this week and see if it's what you need. The website is smartrecovery.org. There's a meeting finder. There's a toolbox of the CBT frameworks they use. You can read through those before you ever even walk into a room or log into a call. That's not on accident. The program is built around self-agency. You're supposed to understand the tools before you use them. Here's what I want you to take from this episode. 2 episodes into this series, and we've already covered 2 completely different philosophies about how recovery works. One says, find community, surrender, build a spiritual foundation. The other says, understand your own mind, build skills, trust yourself to change. Neither is lying. Neither is wrong. They're just built for different people. The question was never whether you're capable of recovery. The real question was always, does this particular path match the way you're built? And now you know there's more than one answer to that. If Smart Recovery sounds like it might be yours, go find a next meeting this week, not next month, this week. One meeting doesn't commit you to anything. It just shows you whether the door fits. Episode 3 is coming, and it's going to challenge something a lot of people inside the recovery community believe. See you there.